Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments, crypto payments made easy.
How much of Bitcoin and the crypto space at large is actually used for crime and illicit activities? How significant is the threat of illicit activities against what you own in cryptocurrencies? We're here to discuss these topics and much more with our expert on this topic, Michal Gromek. He is the co-chair of the Digital Asset Task Force and the Global Coalition to Fight Financial Crime. Michal, welcome to the show. Welcome to Kitco. Pleasure to host you here in Dubai.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to discuss all of the juicy topics connected with financial crime.
Very juicy. Financial crime, in particular, blockchain-related financial crime, because we have to narrow it down. This is a very interesting topic, many facets to discuss. Let's start by talking about first the Digital Asset Task Force. What is the mission here? What do you do?
So the Digital Asset Task Force has been set up in April in 2022. The idea is to drum together experts from both private and public entities to make sure that we look for solutions as Web3 is developing very quickly. There's nothing we can do, but I think we can provide best practices, and we have been drumming those experts together to understand what are the key problems that we have now crystallized.
Okay, and let's talk about these key problems. So set up the framework for us. A lot of people have been telling me, either professionally or personally, that Bitcoin is only used for crime, and that the main purpose of owning cryptocurrencies is to be able to have assets to use for illicit activities. When you look at the data, Michal, is this true?
I think it isn't. So technically, you are not very smart when you use pseudo-anonymous cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or like Ether in order to conduct financial crime. According to reports, illicit activities on the blockchain are roughly somewhere around 0.15%, 0.15% of all of the different transactions.
And in dollar terms, how much in dollar terms is Bitcoin being used for illicit activities?
I think we have to a bit distinguish between Bitcoin and, of course, then Web3 and cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
So it's roughly 14 billion US, but large numbers don't say anything. This is roughly the GDP of Armenia. But when you look on cryptocurrency crime versus the financial crime, then the financial crime is somewhere around 800 billion, what is like 4 times the GDP of Qatar or Greece.
Now, let's focus on the 14 billion for Bitcoin you're talking about. Okay, can you maybe give us some examples of what exactly this is being used for, the criminal activities that are part of the 14 billion? I mean, yes, it's GDP of Armenia, it's still a big number.
No, totally. I think this really depends, for example, from a user perspective. It's similar to all of the different other crimes that we have. It's coming in waves. In the Nordics, where I'm from, we have seen like a wave of investment fraud. Investment fraud means that primarily senior citizens have been targeted and they have been promised big rewards, and then they have transferred their money via certain crypto brokers, and then basically the profits never came back. So you have this as a good example of what actually this type of crime can be. But in blockchain or Bitcoin are not being hacked, but then this is social engineering, how you try to adjust and then approach different individuals to convince them to send the money.
Okay. Let's talk about more specifically why you think it's a bad idea to use, in your words, non-privacy coins like Bitcoin to use for illicit activities. I mean, let me present to you a hypothetical scenario. Suppose I set up a wallet and don't enter my personal information. You can't track that back to me.
I can. I think there are a lot of different tools which I would say, let's call them classified, what we can do, what we should not be sharing. And we have some superpowers, but when you look at all of the exchanges or the major exchanges which are here, they are subject to KYC and anti-money laundering regulation. On the global level, there's a financial action task force which actually pushed most of the countries which are members of this task force to ensure that the cryptocurrency brokers are subject to AML and CTF. So in case you have a wallet like this, it's either super old or you are a member of a quite shady platform potentially.
We are, I'm going to get back to that. But generally speaking, Michal, has KYC evolved to become very rigorous such that you cannot escape regulators' purview?
I think yes. So technically, it's once you are conducting transactions on a blockchain, what is always being forgotten, it's when you conduct usually transactions with a bank, the bank is identifying your sources of funds when they come and you conduct a transaction. when I have been working as a chief compliance officer for the last half a decade, then I see all of the transactions that are happening afterwards as well. So when you send the money to another wallet, then to another wallet, and then to a sanctioned entity, this is still being visible on the blockchain, which is way different than usually with fiat that can still be reported, right?
Okay. I want to talk about enforcement of some of these regulations now. The Global Coalition to Fight Financial Crime, are you related to or in association with any law enforcement agencies around the world?
Totally. So we have been set up by Europol, by the World Economic Forum and Refinitiv, actually with the idea that we sit down and understand what are the key challenges within financial crime. We are agnostic to technology, and being here in Dubai, we can see everything that is developing in connection with Web3. So, for example, in the task force, we just acknowledge a certain developments and we look for best practices, what we can do in order to mitigate those risks, but not to kill the innovation, right?
So you're more on the advisement, the advisor side, consultation side.
Right, I think as well, but we work together on a daily basis. I have the pleasure to work together on a knowledge-based project that we work on with like head of strategy from Europol, where they provide the best practices that they have done so far. We bring the best practices from the industry. We send this to like policymakers, so we understand the gaps in the ecosystem, what everybody needs to try to fill those gaps, because nobody is as smart as all of us, right?
What about privacy coins like Monero,
yes,
that in theory should not be tracked? How would you regulate that space?
They are still tools that you can use for privacy coins as well, which are being used in order to identify the different suspects conducting certain crimes. You can do it. I think generally speaking, conducting transactions on the blockchain and having a feeling that you will run away and will be unpunished is not true. It depends on the amount of money and the amount of sophistication and time that has to go into it from a law enforcement perspective. And I think most of the suspects can be easily tracked.
Does law enforcement currently have the tools right now, Michael, to confiscate your cryptocurrencies if they suspect that you are a criminal or a terrorist?
Totally. So on one side, when we have, it's a little bit like a visualization. So we have tools, they are like blockchain analytical companies which are conducting those type of investigations, or you can basically visualize how the money is traveling on the blockchain. And what is important to say, without programming experience. So you just type in different cryptocurrency wallet addresses and you can see how the transactions have been flowing. We have challenges because each particular country is making its own regulation, because technology is very international, but regulation is very national. So there is a trick of bridging this type of harmonization to make this happen more efficiently.
Okay, suppose I were a criminal or a suspected criminal and I have everything on a cold wallet. Well, what can the police do?
There will be a time period when you will have to plug in your cold wallet to something and you would like to use those funds. There is a possibility that you would like to sell your wallet to somebody else over the counter in a country X, what might be a bit tricky, but I think has been still proven to be possible to trace you. I don't want to say that everything is traceable, but I really would like to underline that conducting transactions on the blockchain with pseudo-anonymous currencies is not as smart to be completed, and as of 2022.
Well, let's talk about the other side of the equation, not just crime that you can use or conduct with blockchain or cryptocurrencies, but actually hacking exchanges or wallets. We've seen wallets hacked this year, Solana being a prominent case. Just as news coming out of this week, Binance Bridge, $100 million worth of cryptocurrencies have been stolen or hacked. I know maybe you can't comment on the particulars, but more broadly, hacking is a concern. How can regulators or law enforcement fight hackers?
I cannot comment on a specific case, but of course I'm aware of it. However, when it comes to cryptocurrency brokers as an example, for a very long time period we have been focusing on cybersecurity to make sure that our systems are pretty solid, that the places where we keep crypto are very solid as well. But the challenge has been on the customer side. So you can do whatever you can, but when the password of the customer still remains password, so it's very easy for them to basically lose those passwords and then have access to the email addresses where they keep access to the cryptocurrency wallet addresses, so the cryptocurrency wallets, so then you will always lose it. So it is a bit of a game versus usability and the convenience of using the different Web3 services and the cybersecurity part of it and the security of it. So I think this will happen. But I have seen a lot of those cases which are more connected with social engineering. I hack your different accounts on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and Instagram. Then I reach out to you. I know that you like grapes, like to travel to Dubai. And then I send you some kind of email, and then this is a phishing attack. And then based on this email I have access to, I'm trying to get an information on what is actually happening on your transactional account, and then here we go. So I think the creativity has been very extensive of the dark side, but I think the cooperation between law enforcement and the other members of the ecosystem has really picked up in the last years.
There's the other concern amongst retail investors of having their funds stolen or rug pulled by the project creator. Not very common, but we've seen examples of this. Squid Game coin off the top of my head. The creators made a coin, not affiliated with the creators of the TV show at all, but they just named a coin like that, pulled the funds away, $3 million stolen. What can regulators do about these things?
I think so generally the first question is like, what would be the dream scenario? Because in some regulators, when they ask you to deploy basically your code to them, and then they review your code, and then should they do like a trust approval saying this code and this token or this solution is approved? So who at the end will be potentially taking the risk in case the founders would like to run away with the money? So this is, as you know, as you are doing this on a daily basis, every time when you play with investments and you would like to invest your money, then there is a risk involved in it. So you just have to make sure that you just select partners which are basically active in a trusted jurisdiction, working with a good regulator. And then you have to have a bit of faith that whatever we do on a global level would yield results that are very accessible for everyone.
I understand the robust, let's go back to KYC and the regulation around that. I understand the advantages of having a robust KYC system, but some people would argue and criticize KYC developments in saying that too much is not good. I'll give you an example. So I'm from Canada. Just this year, there's a new regulation that any cryptocurrency transfer over 1,000 Canadian dollars has to be reported to the exchange. This is a huge inconvenience, and one would argue the whole point of using cryptocurrencies is to bypass this step. Why would I do that? Why would I use cryptos now? If I have to report everything, why can't I just use my bank? It's the same thing, right?
Understood. But then when you use the example from the past that we already know of, which is connected to counterparty risk. So I have been active back in my dark days. I worked in lending.
Yes.
You will never borrow money to me when you don't really know me, right? You have to understand who I really are, who I am, what I have been doing, what is my credit score. I think the logic here is a bit the same. And it's not that the Canadians have introduced that because they really wanted to introduce it. On a global level, there's a financial action task force. If you remember the project Libra, that has not been that successful at the end. So once Facebook has announced that they are doing Libra, the global regulatory body wanted to ensure that we are having some kind of a structure that is sustainable on a global level. And they have introduced something what's called the travel rule. And the Canadians have implemented the travel rule into the national regulation. Sounds a bit confusing, but then generally there is a logic in it. And then the transactions have to be reported mostly automatically. When I have your KYC, you conduct those different transactions. I can inform the different exchange. When you are conducting a bank transfer of 10 cents, your bank knows your KYC and knows to whom you will be sending this particular type of fund. I don't think it's any different.
Okay. This is a little bit different from just financial crime, but some people might have a distrust for the government and say, well, Michael, if the regulators and law enforcement officials have the tools to trace criminals, don't they in theory have the tools to trace all citizens?
Yes. And that's a common concern or a large concern on the in the international space, because you will always have governments which are not as open for citizens to transfer the money without their support.
Yes.
And I do understand the international implication of it. For example, in authoritarian regimes where you would like to buy certain books which are forbidden, or you would like to transfer money to organizations which are actually helping, let's say, democratic movements, but you can't because the government will be tracing you. But then you have to balance this against pedophilia, drugs, and fake pharmaceuticals. And the balance is not very easy to be achieved. That's the reason why, for example, the transactions in Canada are being reported above 1,000 euro. So then the transactions below 1,000 euro are not being reported. But this is a common balance where we struggle with on the international level as well. Just lately, The European Data Protection Agency has expressed some concerns in regards to how Europol is sharing the information. But how would you like to maintain a secure society when the police is not able to share information on suspects with each other, right? There's a balance.
I'm curious as to how the police force globally have over time become more educated in this space. You told me, prior to your current role, you've worked with the police, and it was a learning curve for them to be able to fight financial crime in the digital space. Tell us about this evolution.
It is clearly evolution. I think initially when I have sent different police reports, or when I've been reporting different cases connected with blockchain, roughly 4 or 5 years ago, then I have seen that there were a bit of challenges because not always everything that I've been sending in has been understood. But since now blockchain analytical tools are being widely adopted by law enforcement, I think they have been significantly contributing to the progress on the police level. And there is a big amount of education. But education, when you say education, individuals usually think about history of cryptography and then the history of different types of coins and how they have progressed. At the current stage, what we really need is like hands-on education, basically like knowledge bites and social media level of content to help the police officers to be adjusted to the new developments within Web3. But I know that the leading law enforcement agencies, they have been having like crypto games or like crypto demos or demo investigations. They have been channeling different law enforcement agents together and have been conducting with them investigations on the blockchain, and they have been coming back to the different countries, and then they have been teaching others. So it is a learning curve, you're absolutely correct. It is a rocky learning curve and it's very painful. It's clearly not a bed of roses, but there is a progress that we see, and I feel that there's a huge progress even within the last 6 months.
Okay, a few more questions and I'll let you go. I know you have to get going. So look, some investors are concerned, and going back to getting Rockwell, some investors are concerned that the protocols they're investing in are scams. There's more than 10,000 altcoins. Not all of them are legit protocols or projects. How can you tell if something is legit or not?
I think at the current stage, from a regulatory perspective, I would say we can't. And I don't think that this is something that the regulator is supposed to be stepping in potentially. But once again, I'm not a regulator, so it's a discussion to my colleagues, which are way more experienced in it than I am. However, we have seen the same challenges now in AI, right? Because on one side, we have seen that AI has been declining certain type of customers with certain demographics and certain gender when they have been applying for a credit card in the US. And then when they have appealed, it was unclear why AI has decided to decline those type of customers or not others. You have exactly the same challenge there. So you have a sophisticated algorithm. Everything is getting more and more complex. Technology is merging with finance. At the current stage, I don't think that we will be having solutions, but a couple of years ago, we didn't have solutions of tracing cryptocurrency crime at all, and I think now we are way further. So I think I just have to have a lot of hope into the conference here and then seeing the solutions which are coming out.
Final question, central bank digital currencies are being developed, if not issued, all over the world. Do you foresee a scenario in which central bank digital currencies are being targeted in state-sanctioned cyber attacks that could potentially disrupt the entire financial system of the issuing country?
At the current stage, generally sanctions connected with the Web3 or cryptocurrencies have been very new. They just lately have been coming out in regards to Russia invading Ukraine. So of course there's a statistical possibility to do that. But I am physically located in Stockholm, and there is an innovation office of the Bank of International Settlement.
Yeah.
And then they really focus on this, on cybersecurity and looking for best solutions to actually make sure that this ain't gonna happen.
Well, I'm not just talking about sanctions. I'm talking about directly hacking another country's CBDC and corrupting the system.
But I think there can be way more challenges than that. You can, for example, for the central banks to develop those type of technological solutions, sometimes they work with external partners. I know it's very hypothetical, but just imagine that you work with one of the consultancy agencies to develop your CBDC, and suddenly this consultancy agency is being bought out by North Korea, very hypothetical.
Yes.
Then does this mean that North Korea has access to the IP rights of your CBDC, of your national currency? A possible currency, a possible scenario, highly unlikely. Yeah. But I think you can only resolve this with scenario planning. When you sit down, check what has happened historically, what can potentially happen, and get the best minds together from a global perspective to make sure that you see things before they actually become emergencies.
Just on the note of hacking, since we're talking about that in cybersecurity, right now there's a new trend or theme amongst different countries of digital IDs being developed, storing your personal information on the blockchain. Will that be more or less secure for the individual?
I think this always depends if what happens in case you are losing your phone or you lose your digital identification tool like your smartphone, and then you are
That's the
going
same as losing my wallet and my credit card falls
This
out.
is correct, because so technically there is a big likelihood that you can do something new with it. We had refugees which have been coming to Germany. We had refugees who were actually going from Myanmar towards Bangladesh and India, and they have been using those blockchain-based solutions in order to retrieve the different identity. So we have now seen that there is a possibility for new solutions in this space that we have not seen before. But everything is about recognition. If different government agencies will be able to recognize those different identities, if you will be able to, purchase your mobile phone subscription with it. But we have seen some progress. It's a little bit like with the internet. I think once, back in the dark days, I don't know if you remember the ding modem time period. I think we are in the same time period of digital identities as of today. As we have been with modems in the internet. We would never be able to look into the future and understand that we can have smartphones and you can have a YouTube channel.
All right. Well, Michael, that was very educational.
Always.
Best of luck with fighting crime.
Always.
And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching Kitco News in Dubai. Stay tuned for more.
Kitco News special coverage of the Future Blockchain Summit is brought to you by Coin Payments. Crypto payments made easy.